Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining me for this week's edition of the SMIE Consulting Midweek Roundup. It's Wednesday, July 22nd, 2026, and today we're going to be answering 3 questions we've been hearing from international educators over the last week. So, as we do each week, we take our questions that we ask here on Wednesday afternoon from our newsletter that comes out on Monday. And that Monday morning newsletter is available in 2 formats, either in LinkedIn or in an email version. You can subscribe to either one of those or both at our website, smieconsulting.org/subscribe, and that's pinned in the chat on Facebook, and you'll get that if you go to that link yourself. So as we do with the email newsletter and the LinkedIn version, between them we now have over 3,200 subscribers. So thank you so much for making the newsletter a part of your regular international edification each week. In that newsletter, we have 4 sections each week. 1, social media news, which covers everything from upcoming webinars, how AI is being used, how social media is being leveraged in international education, international recruitment, also any data reports, the interesting blogs that are out there. We feature those in the social media section. Then a big picture issues section, which covers kind of the news of the week in terms of new federal legislation, new rules taking effect, and we have a big one to talk about this week, as well as any kind of votes in Congress, executive orders, that type of thing. Then a solution central. We like to focus on the positive always, and we try and do that here on the Roundup as well. But in the newsletter, we have a section of either case studies that are working, showing success in new areas in international ed, or how different institutions are responding to improve their international recruitment strategies, any reports from international students, graduates, alumni, talking about their experiences, things that can be leveraged appropriately in the future recruitment cycles. And the final section is a global roundup. And the roundup covers what's happening in other destination markets. We all know that we're not the only country that is actively recruiting international students. It used to be the Big 4, now it's a Big 14 and more. That are countries that are actively trying to get a piece of the global student mobility pie, which has grown exponentially over the last 30 years that I've been in the profession, and now as over 7 million students now studying outside their home country. And that means that the pie's gotten bigger, our share's gotten smaller because there's so many more countries competing. So it's good to always have a perspective on what's going on in other countries and some of the challenges that they're facing with either too much growth too fast and restrictions coming in, or new initiatives that are being put in place that we might be able to do something with here in the US. So you have the link to the email version in the chat already. We're going to drop the link to this week's LinkedIn version as well, so you have that. I do encourage you, if you aren't already subscribed, please do so. We know many of you enjoy getting these updates every Monday morning, and I'm so grateful to those of you I meet every week. Every time I'm at a public event, whether it's the NAFSA State Drive-In for Ohio last week down at Franklin University, or at a national NAFSA or an overseas conference, running into people who've gotten to know who I am through that newsletter or through this roundup. And it's really always heartwarming to hear from colleagues who are actively using this content or appreciating the content and doing something with it on their own campuses or in their own work. So very pleased to be with you again this week, and let's get right into the first question. And it's one we knew was coming for almost a year, probably 11 months now, but it's finally upon us, and that is the end of DS ruling. So let's look at what has happened. Obviously, came out on Thursday was the initial warning that it's happening, and the actual ruling came out on Friday, and there was a little bit of confusion. They put out a 553-page PDF that we were to use to try and get a sense of what's happening with this new rule, the end of DS rule. And NAFSA's had a resource page that they put up recently. They had a webinar yesterday. It was kind of the big picture. Here's what we're doing as an association. They talked about the advocacy work that they're doing. Still have yet to get a hashtag onto it to rally all the higher ed associations around a similar goal to not end DS. Don't end DS. whatever it might be, I'm all over it. I put out something yesterday after that advocacy piece from NAFSA came out, got my congressmen and senators notified of my request to them to do something about it and to investigate why this DS mess is happening as it is. We know it's for more control, but for, as I've shared in the newsletter this week, taking a sledgehammer to a problem that deserves a scalpel. The claim was that it's to end fraud, and for most institutions that are enrolling international students, part of the challenge, frankly, is the institutions that have the institutions that are allowed to be a part of SEVIS and to then enroll international students. There hasn't been a whole lot of vetting of those institutions other than them being legally able to and registered as a business in that state. There's no real quality control on those institutions that have been allowed to that to admit international students and take them and issue the I-20s that are then used for visas. So that's probably the bigger issue that would be more of a problem of how that system was set up back in the early 2000s when SEVIS became a thing post 9/11. And the fraud that they say exists post completion work with OPT, that's a different problem, and again a microcosm of the larger numbers we're talking about. So with over 1.1 million, they said 1.8 in their review, which is nowhere near correct. It's like 1.1, 1.2 max international students, plus those that are on, including those that are on OPT. So it's what it does is it places limits not on visas. Again, visas and status are two different things in the United States. They oftentimes in other countries, visas are tied to status wherever they are. But in the U.S., the visa is only for entry purposes. It doesn't say how long a student can stay in the United States. That this is the visa stamp they get at the embassy or consulate overseas. Once they enter the United States, until September 15th, they're going to be getting what's called, and what has been the case since 1991, an F1 DS stamp in their passport and on their I-20. After September 15th, new arrivals, unless it gets challenged or litigation is pending that puts this implementation on hold, will require all students when they enter the United States on an I-20, whether they're new or returning, if they're coming back in after September 15th, they will all get a stamp with a specific end date. Now, what that end date is a maximum of 4 years, 4 actual calendar years, plus a month, which includes the grace period that they bake in. They've reduced that grace period from 60 days down to 30 days. And that will be a calendar year. So if they come in on September 16th, they will have, and for a bachelor's degree program where they're just starting, it will be 4 years maximum, a 4-year bachelor's degree program, or even a PhD program that might take them 7 or 8 years. They're only going to get 4 years on that I-20 in terms of the stamp that's on their passport. That will say F1, and it will have an AUD, admitted until date. And that admitted until date will be 4 years if it's a bachelor's or PhD candidate, plus 30 days. And that, so if it's September 15th, 2026 or September 16th, 2026, 4 years later, 7, 8, 9, 30, it'll be September 15th, 2030 plus 30 days. So October 14th. So that will be the new AUD, admitted until date. So instead of DS after September 15th, that will be the way the dates are calculated for when a student has to finish their program. Now, let's say it's a master's degree and it's a 2-year program. At least right now, we were having some questions about this at our NAFSA state drive-in last Thursday, talking to a chap at University of Cincinnati, and he was sharing, well, is it going to be, if you plug in a master's degree for a new I-20 after September 15th, what is the program end date going to be? Is it going to automate to 2 years plus 30 days from whenever the program start date is listed? Or do you have flexibility? If it's a 3-year master's program, can you put that in there? Maybe if there's a year of work available as part of a degree requirement, is that something that you can do? So what the mess is it's clearly throwing everything up in the air in terms of over almost 50 years of standard operating procedures for international students that come into the country. So what this does, and they say it's for oversight and control and regulation of these individuals that might come in as a high school student and make their way all the way through associates, bachelor's, master's, and doctoral program. That student would then have to apply for an extension up to 5 times to move from every to the next degree level, or go home and try and come back on a new visa for it with new documents. So there are costs involved, extra costs. Obviously, this extension of stay will cost the applicants every time they want to do that. Institutions up until now have had luxury to make those extensions on their own if they're staying within a certain degree level. Even transferring from one degree level to the next, no issues there. Adding a second master's degree, no problem there. But now with this program, with the end of DS, the other half of it, and perhaps less well advertised part, is no longer will students be able to change institutions within the first semester, first few weeks of arriving. They have to attend the institution that they enter in the country on their documents. They have to enroll for a full academic year now, whereas this will hopefully and ideally will eliminate the transfer outs, or instead of them even trying to transfer to a new school, which they won't be able to do, they just will no-show and disappear into the woodwork without any destination address that they will have on record. So who knows if that's intended purpose or not? Probably not. Then you also will no longer will be able to change your program. If you start in business and you want to switch to engineering, you can't do that anymore once this rule takes place. You can't add a second bachelor's degree program. You can't add a second master's degree program. If you've done one in the U.S. and you try to do another, you won't be able to do that. You'll have to progress to a higher level. So basically, it changes the game for what international students are now able to do in terms of study. So we're now forcing an 18-year-old, and we say this to our high school students in the U.S. all the time. It's okay if you change your major, and because you may do that 2, 3, 4 times in your undergraduate career. International students no longer will have that option. So they're treated as a different class of students now, academically and by our government, to take away any flexibility they have in terms of academic programs and changing their mind. That's no longer an option for an international student after September 15th. And that is a seismic shift, probably more so than the end of DS. The end of DS, to be honest with you, every country has limits on what they're legally allowed to enter the students when they enter the country to pursue a degree. And oftentimes they limit it to the length of the program. And the problem is the length of the program for most of our bachelor's degree students at University of Akron, we did give them I-20s for 5 years, just because we know that there's oftentimes extra semesters that are required to complete degree programs. Adding the second major isn't an option either. If you're in an engineering program or another degree that requires a co-op work experience, that'll push you well beyond the 4 years. So what do we do in those circumstances? We want to advertise that as an attractive element to the program to help offset costs and make it more affordable. But is that no longer a realistic possibility if they have until that 4th year to finish their program? And even if they don't do the co-op and they want to get into OPT, they have to apply for an extension and for permission to work through OPT at the same time. And what does that look like? There's still a lot of unknowns that we don't have nailed down yet. There is going to be litigation. We can already hear that coming. What I did hear, we heard from Mark Overman at the Academy for International, or the Alliance for International Exchange. Sorry, Mark. He was our keynote speaker at the conference last Thursday, and he shared that there are 2 ways that this can change. You can have litigation, and we've all seen many lawsuits over the last year and a half challenging certain parts or executive orders or rules that the government has tried to implement. That is one way to stall this, or cancel it, or reverse it, or have certain parts of it reevaluated. The other is for a congressional review to happen to say, why is this happening? This really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We're going to lose billions of dollars of revenue to our states because of this. And that was part of the NAFSA campaign, is talking about, like they do often in their advocacy efforts. Other organizations do the same thing, but NAFSA had theirs out yesterday. I contacted my congressman, my 2 senators from Ohio, and shared, hey, this isn't right. The NAFSA template, you could send it right away. It happens and it gets done. One of my senators, he's a new. Both my Ohio senators have been new in the last year and a half. But the one of the 2, Bernie Moreno, has an auto response that goes out to every email that gets sent to him. I get the same response, and I've contacted him probably 5 or 6 times in the last year and a half with different advocacy-related issues, and it's always the same response. So this time I said, this is too important not to take the opportunity to respond back, and I responded back to that template, that auto response email, and laid out the facts of my years in higher education, working in the international ed field, being an international student myself. When I came as a 5-year-old into kindergarten, when our family moved from England to the U.S., talking about the transition from one level to the next, talking about the loss of revenue, that the values that these international students bring to our campuses, to our communities, sharing their cultures, opening the eyes of our domestic students that aren't looking to travel abroad, study abroad during their undergrad years, but want to maybe get them exposed to the world around them outside these borders, but to get them appreciating what they're going to experience if they enter the world of work outside these borders, that they will be working with people from cultures all around this world. So knowing who they are, what they value, what's important to them, but then also the economic value of these students coming into our country. And you'd think that would matter to senators and representatives, that the students that come here spend money on tuition, money on housing, money on food, money on resources that they need to sustain themselves while they're students, all of that contributing to the local economies that they're living in. That seems to have gotten lost and missed by this administration. So we're trying to find those particular levers that work. We know it doesn't work as much for the senior administration. The least executive branch don't seem to care anymore about the economic value of international students. But we know in certain districts in certain states that this could be the trigger that makes it relevant for a particular senator or representative. So I responded back and say, hey, I appreciate that you're at least responding. Of all the elected officials, you're the only one that even has an autoresponder. But what I am pressing upon you is the need to reconsider this and have congressional review of this action and how devastating it's going to be to local institutions that are enrolling international students and making us as a country far less welcoming. And I went on to say, hey, I agree that the border situation in the last 4 years was a total train wreck. And I know that's been the focus of the administration, but unfortunately, the administration has wrapped up a lot of good students into the bad of what happened in the last 4 years, and they're not the problem. They're the least bad part of the problem that immigration poses to this country. And in fact, they're already the most monitored immigrant group, non-immigrant group in the United States now because of SEVAs and what that requires of them over the time that they're here in the U.S. So I haven't got a response yet. That was on Friday. Or Friday or Monday. No, it was yesterday actually, Tuesday. So we haven't got a response on that. But what the mess is now, it's between now and September 15th. Pray to God we get legislation. Pray to God we got a congressional review, because that's the only way this is going to change or not be fully implemented. We all know and have parts of this that we absolutely despise. The one thing in it we like is that it gets rid of the ability to switch schools in the first year. Academic year, they can't do that, so that's good. That's revenue for the university. That's all the work that you did to recruit them. The students have to be much more sure about what they're doing before they come now. And I saw one of my colleagues in India, Manish Zaveri of Career Mosaic. She had a very intelligent point earlier this week that made the point that, hey, you can't just go in willy-nilly to the United States anymore. You have to be extremely focused. You have to know exactly what you want to do. You need to do your homework much more diligently than you have been doing in the past. And that's something that maybe improves the quality of applications we're getting, and then that in turn improves the success rate at the embassies. I don't know. I won't go that far yet, but there's certainly that's the only positive. But at least some agencies and partners overseas are taking steps to frame it as a way to focus on the serious students. And putting lipstick on a pig is probably the best analogy I can give it. But it's a huge mess that we're all challenged with right now, and certainly we're going to see a lot more of that. So shared with you the Chronicle piece on it. There's Inside Higher Ed. All the major outlets, even run-of-the-mill outlets that we never really hear from, are putting their 2 cents in on this ruling to share what they think is happening here. So we're going to see a lot more of this, I think, in the weeks to come. Hopefully, we see some challenges to this ruling, and that we see folks congressionally getting involved when they realize, oh, wow, we guess we should do something about this. So that's all we have for time for on that section. But I do want to jump over to our next one, and that has to do with AI. And can AI and critical thinking skills exist in the same classroom? This is a real challenge, and I think most will agree that critical thinking skills, the liberal arts philosophy of U.S. higher education, is being challenged at the moment with the introduction of all these AI tools. The ability for, particularly at schools that don't have set AI policies that limits use or control usage in one way or the other, the ability to have students submit everything through AI, then you have AI detectors and the back and forth there. The ability for students to think critically is something that is getting lost in this shovel. We've seen institutions gutting their core curriculum. In Texas, there's one school that's gutting 40% of its core curriculum classes that teach the kind of critical thinking skills we're talking about: the research skills, the communication skills, the rhetorical skills, the ability to think on your feet. And one institution, a law school, University of Chicago Law School, is now banning all technology in the classroom to prevent students, particularly in these oral arguments, that lawyers need to develop. They need to develop those skills. They can't develop those through AI. That's just not possible. So when you're cross-examining someone, when you're taking advantage of the ability to think critically on how an argument is being crafted by the opposing counsel, all of these things you won't have AI to really process that for you. Maybe someday you'll have a little a chip in your brain that might do it for you. But right now, that's a real skill. Oral argument skills are vital to the legal profession for those that are going to be in the courtroom. So law schools, like the University of Chicago, are considering and have, in this case, banned tablets, phones, computers, laptops in the classroom. So to try and force them to go old school. I remember just seeing an episode of The Pit, a really good show on HBO Max. Goes hour by hour through a workday for folks in an emergency room in Pittsburgh. And this most recent season, they've had a period of time, 5 or 6 hours, that the internet went down. There were cyber attacks in other hospitals, so their IT folks said, we're going to shut down everything. So they had to go back to the 90s in terms of how they operated and have dry erase boards that they were recording patient charts on, and then stacks for different processes for labs and x-rays and all these different things. So that going old school can have teach some important skills. So interesting to see if that same logic will apply across universities as they look to adapt AI into their classrooms. Now, final piece of the puzzle I want to talk to you tonight about today is what's happening down under. Australia, in the last couple of years, they've entered into this period of intentional managed growth, and growth is a kind of a misnomer. They've kind of keeping things level. They've imposed a quota system for individual institutions that will up to 80% of an institution's cap for international students. They are doing visa processing as normal. But once they hit 80% to 100%, of that cap, they slow it down, they throttle back. Like if you're on a data plan and you hit a certain point, then your data gets throttled down, so things slow down. And that's happening in Australia. That the growth, they are seeing growth technically. It's modest growth, if anything. It's being driven for the university sector from within Australia. So you have students that have done vocational coursework or English language coursework and are matriculating to higher ed institutions or progressing from one degree level to the next. That's where institutions are seeing growth in their numbers. So we do know that that's happening in Australia, but it's not happening externally. Why isn't it happening externally? Because of the visa processing challenges that have happened in terms of they've gotten much stricter for applicants from certain parts of the world, particularly South Asia. You've seen their visa fees double last year, and then this year they added an extra $500 onto the Australian dollars onto the fee. They've added fees for different levels as well, and then they've increased the amount that students need to show to get their visas. They've increased English level requirements. So there's been significant change to what international students in Australia have to do to get their visas in the first place. But what is happening in Australia is certainly one that I think we should all be paying attention to in the United States, because we are seeing certainly our government has put in place not so much to manage the growth, but to restrict it. Not quite as severely as Canada has, at least initially. U.S. is still the #1 destination, still has a lot to offer in terms of quality, in terms of experience, in terms of work afterwards. All of that's very much baked into the U.S. Model. That's still very attractive, but this administration has kind of whittled down the ability of certain students coming in to really maximize their time here. It forces students into very, very unfortunate situations. But that's all we have for you this week on the Roundup. Please know that we'll have we will do a live next week, and then which will be the 8th anniversary of the Midweek Roundup. I'm happy to say that we'll have had a full 8 years of these Wednesday live chats that have been coming to you, and we're going to celebrate that next Wednesday. The following week, I'll be with a delegation from the University of Akron visiting partner universities in India. So we're going to be leading our provost and 3 of our faculty there. So looking forward to that. Won't have time for a live that week. Also that week, we will not have our newsletter out because I'll be in the air the weekend when I normally work on those. So that's all we have for you this week. Looking forward to chatting again in the weeks and months to come. Thanks so much and have a great day.